on Iwo Jima. I had 5 uncles in World War II. 2 did not suffer military action. 1 was killed on the Solomon Islands. 1 was in the Navy on a landing ship in the South Pacific. 1 uncle was in the Marines on Iwo Jima. Recently, we saw this flag draped joyfully across the shoulders of Olympians. That's a far cry from a fluttering over the stench and blood of war. Prayer today is not easy for me. May we pray. Dear God, you created us for harmony and peace, and we find ourselves survivors of discord and scars of war. We weary ourselves with greed, hate, prejudice, and grasp for power. Heal us by your grace, so we may embrace peace, harmony, and even prosperity. May we always remember the flag is far more than fabric. Enable us to embody the red valor of strength of mind in the face of danger, the purity of white in being morally upright, and the blue of vigilance, awake to danger and alive to liberty and justice for all. May our pledge be far more than rote words, and may it embody us to serve you, country, citizens, in appreciation for those who served well before us and set for us examples to implement. God, grant us courage to shoulder our flag with worthy service. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Senator Salazar will lead us in the pledge, and then I'll have him remain standing for privilege of the floor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Senator Salazar. Wait, there you go.
Mr. President, point of privilege, if I may.
Do.
Honorable senators, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing 2 very, very good friends of mine. The mayor of Shoshone, Joel Highsmith, and the mayor of Du Bois, Honorable John Meyer. If you could give them a welcome, thank you.
Thank you, welcome to the Senate, gentlemen. Any further privileges? Okay, let's proceed. Yeah, he does. All right, will the reading clerk please read the Journal Committee report?
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 22, 2022 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Cole, the chairman.
Thank you. Are there any objections? Being none, the report is adopted. Our nurse of the day, Rachel Settles, Wyoming Board of Nursing. Rachel, are you back there? Step up and let's have the Senate acknowledge you. Thank you. Thank you for keeping us healthy today. Doctor of the day, Matthew Mitchell. I believe he's down in the house. And okay, let's take messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, February 2022, 2022. Message number 5. Mr. President, this is to inform you that the House has adopted the following amendment to the permanent and joint rules of the 66th Wyoming State Legislature. Dispensing with further reading, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. House bills on first reading. House Bill 39, first reading of the bill.
House Bill 39, Pre-Application Determinations for Licensing, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee.
House Bill 39, assigned to Judiciary Number 1. House Bill 42, first reading of the bill.
House Bill 42, Local Government Distribution, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, passed the House. Ayes 49, noes 10, excused 1.
House Bill 42, assigned to number 2, Appropriations. House Bill 59, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 59, Workers' Compensation COVID-19, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, passed the House. Ayes 59, excused 1.
House Bill 59, assigned to number 2, Appropriations. House Bill 78, first reading of the bill.
House Bill 78, Bid Rejection or Denial for Public Works Contracting, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, passed the House. Ayes 50, noes 9, excused 1.
House Bill 78, assigned to number 2, Appropriations. House Bill 79, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 79, Employment Support Fund Amendments, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, passed the House. Ayes 37, noes 19, excused 4.
House Bill 79, assigned to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. House Bill 21, first reading of the bill.
House Bill 21, Repealing Exemption for One-Way Pagers, sponsored by the Revenue Committee, passed the House. Ayes 59, excused 1.
House Bill 21, assigned to Committee Number 3, Revenue. House Bill 22, first reading of the bill.
House Bill 22, Industrial Revenue Bonds Pilot Payment, sponsored by the Revenue Committee, passed the House. Ayes 41, noes 18, excused 1.
House Bill 22, assigned to Committee Number 3, Revenue. House Bill 29, first reading of the bill.
House Bill 29, Hathaway Scholarship Amendments, sponsored by the Education Committee, passed the House. Ayes 44, noes 12, excused 4.
House Bill 29, assigned to Committee Number 4, Education. House Bill 30, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 30, School Finance Increasing Cash Reserves, sponsored by the Education Committee, passed the House. Ayes 46, noes 10, excused 4.
House Bill 30, assigned to Committee Number 4, Education. House Bill 4, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill number 4, Water Permits Livestock on Federal Land, sponsored by the Agriculture Committee, passed the House. Ayes 60.
House Bill 4, assigned to Committee Number 5, Agricultural. House Bill 43, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 43, Trophy Game, Big Game, and Wild Bison's License Allocation, sponsored by the Travel Committee, passed the House. Ayes 45, noes 11, excused 4.
House Bill 43, assigned to Committee Number 6, Travel, Rec, Wildlife. House Bill 80, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 80, Campaign Reports Amendments, sponsored by the Corporations Committee, passed the House. Ayes 41, noes 15, excused 4.
House Bill 80, assigned to Committee Number 7, Corporations. House Bill 7, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 7, Commercial Vehicle Driving Disqualification, sponsored by the Transportation Committee, passed the House. Ayes 59, excused 1.
House Bill 7, assigned to Committee Number 8, Transportation. House Bill 8, first reading of the House, House Bill 53, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 53, Military Department Discrimination or Harassment Grievances, sponsored by the Transportation Committee, passed the House.
House Bill 53, assigned to Committee Number 8, Transportation. House Bill 9, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 9, Economic Development Programs, Tribal Inclusion, sponsored by the Select Tribal Committee, passed the House. Ayes 51, noes 5, excused 4.
House Bill 9, assigned to Committee Number 9, Minerals. House Bill 45, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 45, Mine Reclamation Bonding Voluntary Assigned Trust, sponsored by the Minerals Committee, Passed the House, ayes 56, excused 4.
House Bill 45, assigned to Committee Number 9, Minerals. House Bill 46, first reading the House Bill.
House Bill 46, Partnership Challenge Loan Program Amendment, sponsored by the Minerals Committee. Passed the House, ayes 44, noes 12, excused 4.
House Bill 46, assigned to Committee Number 9, Minerals. House Bill 70, first reading the House Bill.
House Bill 70, Digital Identity Protection, sponsored by the Blockchain Committee. Passed the House, ayes 59, noes 1.
House Bill 70, assigned to Committee Number 9, Minerals. House Bill 33, first reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 33, Community Health Services Continued Redesign Efforts, sponsored by the Labor Committee. Passed the House, ayes 59, noes 1.
House Bill 33, assigned to Committee Number 10, Labor Health. Reports from standing committees.
February 22, 2022. Mr. President, your Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 109, Wyoming Gaming Commission Board Member Conduct, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Ellis, Guru, Salazar, and Schuler. No, Senator Landon. Senator Ellis, Chairman. February 22, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands, and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 97, Change in Party Affiliation. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. Senator Boner, Chairman. February 22, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands, and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 81, Clarification of Existing State Ownership of Groundwater, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. Senator Boner, Chairman. February 22, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands, and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 86, Wildfires One Call Exemption. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. Senator Boner, Chairman. February 22, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 3, Revenue, to whom was referred Senate File 76, Financial Exploitation of Vulnerable Adults, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Baldwin, Case, James, Pappas, and Schuler. Senator Baldwin, acting chairman. February 22, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred Senate Joint Resolution 2, Senior Citizen Property Tax Relief Constitutional Amendment, respectfully reports same back to the Senate that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Baldwin, Case, James, Pappas, and Schuler. Senator Case, Chairman.
Thank you. Bills on second reading. Senate File 12, second reading of the Senate file. Reading clerk, read it in.
Senate File 12, Airport Restaurant Liquor Licenses.
There are no amendments. Senate File 12, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. Senate File 26, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 26, District Judge Positions, Authorization and Funding.
There are no amendments. Senate File 26, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 36, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 36, Pharmacy Benefits Managers Act Enhancements.
There are amendments. Please read in the first. No. Oh, yeah. There are amendments. This is second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 36. Senator Baldwin.
Mr. President, thank you for recognizing me. I request without objection that we lay this back for another day as the bringer of one of the amendments is out for the morning. She should be back tomorrow.
No problem. We can do that. That is, for the record, Senate File 36 laid back. Senate File 47. Second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 47, carbon storage and sequestration liability.
There are no amendments. Senate File 47, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 48, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 48, 2022 large project funding.
Senate File 48, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 53, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 53, local government liability pool amendments.
Senate File 53, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 68, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 68, decentralized autonomous organizations amendments.
Senate File 68, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 99, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 99, public monies, deposits, and credit unions.
Senate Files 99 have been read two separate times. Question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 102, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 102, Second Amendment of Protection Act.
Senate File 102, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Bills on third reading and final passage. No consent list, we're going to straight to the bills. Senate File 23, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 23, nursing home administrators, sponsored by the Labor Committee, an act relating to professions and occupations.
Senate File 23, there are no amendments. Senate File 23, are you ready for the question? Senate File 23, having been read three separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 23, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings excused. James? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 23, 29 aye, 1 excused.
Senate File 23, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 23 has passed the Senate. Senate File 24, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File.
Senate File 24, pharmacist and pharmacy technician practice, sponsored by the Labor Committee, an act relating to professions and occupations.
There are no amendments. Are you ready for the question? Senate File 24, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, call the roll, please.
Third reading roll call, Senate File 24. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings excused. James? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 24, 29 aye, 1 excused.
Senate File 24, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the Senate, Senate File 24 has passed the Senate. Senate File 101, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 101, Epinephrine and Naloxone Administration Authority, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss, an act relating to public health and safety.
There are no amendments. Are you ready for the question on Senate File 101? Senate File 101, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 101, third reading roll call. Anderson?
Excused? Oh,
Anderson, aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings excused. James? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader?
aye.
Aye. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 101, 29 aye, 1 excused.
Senate File 101, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 101 has passed the Senate. Senate File 103, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 103, Education Limitations on Teaching Critical Race History 2, sponsored by Senator McEwen, an act relating to education.
There are amendments. Please read in the first amendment.
Senate File 103, third reading amendment number 1, page 2, lines 11 through 18, delete.
Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 103 and ask for your favorable support. I tried to get this in yesterday on second reading, but literally as you were reading it in on second reading, the amendment came through, so that's why I couldn't get it approved in time. So I apologize for bringing this on third, but taking one more crack at subsection B to define it a little better. There's been a lot of mischaracterization of this bill out there in the media, and I think a lot of our constituents are reading the headlines and not the bill. So I think in order to further define what the intent of this bill does, I went and got this amendment prepared for you. It just basically sets out in less vague language than what we currently have in the bill, spells out what we're not going to do when we're teaching history. So it'll say the instruction on the topics enumerated above, where no person is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously, solely by virtue of race or sex. No race is inherently superior to another. No person shall be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly on the basis of race, color, national origin, religion, disability, or sex. Meritocracy or traits, including hard work ethic, are not racist, but are fundamental to the right to pursue happiness and to be rewarded for industriousness. No person, by virtue of his race, sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. No person shall be made to feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on the account of race. And part 7 there, instructional personnel may facilitate discussions and use curricula to address in an age-appropriate manner topics of sexism, slavery, racial oppression, racial segregation, racial discrimination, including topics related to the enactment and enforcement of laws resulting in sexism, race, So we're not saying what you can't teach. We're just saying you can't teach it in a way that I just laid out. So I think it better defines what we're getting after, Mr. President, and it's a little bit less vague language, and it just basically states in clear language what we're trying to prevent, Mr. President. Vote it up or vote it down. That's just my idea, and ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. We're on third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 103. Discussion. Right. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just reading the amendment, and I'm struck. I guess all I can say, I don't know if I'm for or against it just yet, I'm still reading it, but I will get up and say that I do enjoy very much when my friends on the other side of the aisle become politically correct. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kinski, are you up? Senator McEwen.
Mr. President, and thank you to the senator from the other side of the Bighorns. Basically, we went back through this, and we thought initially the language was quite clear, but hearing some feedback, evidently it wasn't really clear. This amendment really doesn't change any intent of the bill. It doesn't change any of the content of the bill. It just merely outlines what hate and what you can and can't do. So I would urge everybody to support it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion on the amendment? Senator Scott?
Mr. President, let me say I agree with the last statement that it doesn't substantively change what's in the bill. Mr. Chairman, and remind the Senate that what we're replacing is not the text that if you have the original bill, we're replacing what was the standing committee amendment that cut the bill down to basically one sentence on the really fundamental principles that are at stake here. And Mr. President, I think it's a stylistic difference how much detail we go into. I don't see anything that's wrong in this amendment. I want to make it very clear that I will support the bill, whether it has this amendment or the amendment that we passed in committee of the whole, standing committee amendment, because I really think it doesn't change. Mr. Chairman, it's a stylistic preference for keeping this simple and on the essentials, and I think that might help the bill going forward. You get this much detail in it, and somebody will start picking at some detail in there. And I think we're better off with the principles, but it's really, Mr. President, a matter of style. So I'm going to vote no on the amendment, but whether the amendment passes or not, I'm going to urge you to vote for the bill.
Further discussion on the amendment? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm against the bill, or excuse me, the amendment. And there was discussion in the standing committee about trying to simplify it rather than complicate it, which was the justification for arriving at the standing committee amendment, which ended up being generally good common language of, you'll recall, it was very simple and straightforward. that the American institution ideals shall not include tenets that promote divisions or hatred on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, or national origin. Pretty straightforward, just trying to say in general, let's not promote hate and division. And it's simple, and it's rather easy to get behind that. The fact that someone somewhere was offended by that language not being good enough honestly disturbs me as to what this language does that was incomplete in language that says don't hate and be divisive. Where did that fall short that all of this provides more completeness? And so when I read it, now it does start to sound like there's an agenda. There's something that needs to be taught or shouldn't be taught, that we're selecting specific things that can and can't be taught in the classroom. And that's the fundamental concern with adding anything to statute. It then becomes the legislature determining what is right to teach and what is wrong to teach, and engaging in selection of curriculum, not just standards, us putting our thumb on the scale of what we think is right. So no doubt many members of this Senate agree with every statement on this page, but that's not our responsibility to determine what is truth. It's scary when this legislature gets to determine what is truth. And it's very much outside of the bounds of an appropriate legislative action when we are dictating truth through statute. We should stay separate from these types of decisions. We should stay separate from dictating curriculum and what should and shouldn't be taught. So, Mr. President, on and against the amendment.
Further discussion on the amendment? Further discussion? Ready for the question? Question on, back to the sponsor. There you go, sir.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just to bring it home on my second time. To answer the most recent comment, read the title of the bill, Education, Limits on Teaching Critical Race Theory. What I just outlined in my amendment is basically the opposite of critical race theory and what they're trying to teach our children. That's the whole impetus behind the bill being drafted, and that's why we brought the bill, is to stop the teaching to our kids that one race is inherently better than the other. We're going backwards, not forwards, if we allow critical race theory in our schools. Martin Luther King, everything he fought for is out the window if we allow that kind of poison in our schools. And everybody said, well, you can't define critical race theory. Other people said, I know it if I see it. This is a way that we can put it on paper, very specific language, what we see, what we don't want our kids taught, and how we're going to teach it right down the middle, not one side or the other, and not color it with this critical race theory. So I'm for the amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Question on the amendment. Question is, this is on third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 103. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. No. Division? All those in favor stand. Twenty-two for, 9 against. Amendment passes. Okay. Second amendment, read it in, please.
Senate File 103, third reading amendment number 2, delete.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to withdraw third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 103.
Absent objection, it has been withdrawn. This is third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 103.
I was just batting cleanup.
Back on the bill. Senate File 103, any discussion? Question? Senate File 103. Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against the bill. And again, it gets into the responsibilities and the division of responsibilities with regard to educational content in the state of Wyoming and where it's determined and how it's determined. We have a process and we have a system. That process and the system is designed to depoliticize what is and isn't taught in the classroom. That's consistent with the Constitution, where it does prohibit the legislature from weighing in on textbooks. Now, I understand that this is not explicitly a textbook. I get that. But the Constitution was written quite a while back, as we may recall, and the idea when that was written was to ensure that truth, facts, and information were not political, that a legislating body would not be the body deciding what should and shouldn't be taught. So we have a system that provides that opportunity to our local school boards. Our local school boards get to decide the curriculum, while the State Board of Education gets to decide the standards that are taught to. Two very different things, with intricate processes, with public comment, with a lot of debate and discussion, Mr. President, that honestly has provided a pretty good product. A pretty good product, in fact, that has led to a circumstance where there is no concern in the state of Wyoming with anything inappropriate being taught in our schools with regard to critical race theory. This is one of those national topics, one of those coffee shop topics, as my good friend from Casper used to say, and probably still does from time to time, where there's a lot of concern and consternation out there, but it's not based on anything that's actually happening. Because our system of education requires our educators to be certified and to teach robust, fact-based information in civics, presenting as much information as they can on both sides and trying to present age-appropriate information. All the kinds of things that we've heard that we're aspiring to, Mr. President. Teach facts, teach the history. Don't editorialize, offer information, and that's what we've done. That's what we're doing in this state, and there's no evidence to the contrary. But we're upset about stories we've heard where maybe that's not what's happening elsewhere. And so we have legislation that we bring forward where this body is now trying to say, thou shalt not teach certain things in certain ways. Whether you agree with what's here or not, I'd ask each of you to step back and say, should we be doing this? And I'll note for the past 12 years, I've been giving the same speech, regardless of what the content is. Whether I agree with the content or disagree with the content that's to be taught. And it's gone both ways. Sometimes I have thought, this is great content. I hope they do teach it in our schools, but I hope it doesn't go this way where we mandate it. So there's two issues here. But you should never get to the second one, Mr. President. The two issues are, first, should we be doing this? And the answer unequivocally should be no. And that should be enough to vote no. And then you can think, well, is it something that I agree with? But don't get to that point. Come on, let's try and keep this educational system that we have as depoliticized as possible, where we're not responsible for telling our teachers what to teach in their classroom. We have duly elected local boards of trustees that hear directly from those parents in an exceptional process that has led to a continuation of fact-based teaching in our classroom, and I hope we'll continue that, Mr. President, on and against the bill.
Further discussion? Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, we live in extraordinary times with extraordinary challenges. And I think this bill does a lot to level the playing field and take away hatred. Gives our children a chance to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic, and not be taught what to think. So I think it has to be explicit, and I think these things are where we're at today. And so I'm in favor of this, and I stand on for the bill. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
President.
you. Further discussion on Senate File 103. Over to Senator Scott.
Mr. President, let me first say, I agree with what the previous senator said 100%, so I'm going to try to avoid repeating what he said. But I think the ultimate responsibility for what gets taught in our public schools does rest here. And frankly, that's what the Campbell decision said. And I think we do have to pay attention. These are very trying times in our country because we have a set of politicians nationally who, for their own political gain, are promoting divisive, racist theories, who are denying the fundamental principles that this country is founded on, that everybody is created equal. And some of that has crept into Wyoming. I have heard specific complaints in Wyoming, not so much about specific school districts, so I think I may eventually hear some of those, but about specific things that are being taught that are contrary to our basic principles of equality. And this bill reinforces that we want those basic principles of equality taught in our schools. And I think that's the right thing to reinforce. I think the issue is sufficiently raised nationally and on occasion locally, so that it is timely to speak out on that in more detail than we have. We've long, Mr. President, required the teaching of the Constitution. This is emphasizing a particular key feature of that Constitution, which is being violated in other places in this country, and is on occasion being violated here. And I think it's time to put the preventive medicine in to stop it. I don't see anything in the text that we have now in the bill that any decent American should disagree with. I think it's our fundamental principles that we're founded on. And so for those reasons, Mr. President, I urge us to pass the bill. I think it's the right thing to do at this time, given what's going on.
Further discussion, Senator Case? Well, no, I did see Senator Wasserberger stand up. Let's go Wasserberger, Case, Schuler. Senator Wasserberger.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I was on board with this bill until the last sentence on the amendment at lines 38 through 41. Classroom instruction and curricula shall not be used to indoctrinate or persuade students to a particular point of view inconsistent with the principles of this subsection or state academic standards. And so, Mr. President, as your social studies teacher on the floor after 16 years of teaching, when I taught American history, I taught it with a specific purpose in mind. For instance, when we talked about equality, and Wyoming and this floor should be so proud of where Wyoming is, the very first state in the history of the world as an organized government to give women the right to vote. The first state. And so when I taught my students about women's rights and the right to vote, I talked about Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and the passage of the 19th Amendment. And I taught it with a specific purpose that women and men are equal in the state of Wyoming. When I taught about civil rights, we started out with the Dred Scott case. And you had to talk about the Constitution and how the Constitution recognized African Americans as property and slaves, and how that led to the Civil War. And then you moved forward to Plessy versus Ferguson, the idea that separate but equal was somehow okay. And then we moved on to Brown versus the Board of Topeka, where we desegregated the United States. There was a specific purpose in mind. I was trying to teach those young people what equality means in the purposes of sex, in the purposes of ethnic group, in the purpose of race. And so, at least to me, as I read that last 3 lines on the amendment, that could be construed to be unlawful in some way. And so the idea that civil rights and that philosophy of a young teacher so many years ago is wrong, I just don't believe in it. And I think we're headed down the wrong path. And I would ask you, if you're going to support the bill, I would hope that that last line would come out. But at this time, I think I'm a no.
Before we go back to Senator Byman, let's go Case, Schuler, then Byman. Senator Case.
Mr. President, we're very afraid now. All of us are afraid. We're afraid of change in our nation. We're afraid of this and that. We think we're in the worst of times. We've seen worse times, Mr. President. The members that preceded us in the Senate have seen worse times. They didn't react this way. They looked at our Constitution, saw where textbooks weren't to be prescribed. They understood what that meant. And they trusted, and they were optimistic, and they built this great state and helped to build this great country. They trusted their local school boards. They trusted the people that they elected to do the schools. They were optimistic, Mr. President. They were optimistic because they believed in people. I don't know, I always marvel when the students come in and go up there and scurry around those steps, you know, and I watched Senator Boner's child today up there, and I am so optimistic. We have such a wonderful future if we trust each other and trust the institutions that we built. Trust those local school boards to do the right thing. Mr. President, you're in the newspaper business. How would you feel if we were dictating how you had to produce your paper? It doesn't seem that far removed for me to dictate to school boards that they have to teach things a certain way. I kind of like watching minds grow, evaluating for themselves different things, experimenting, being open-minded, challenging our basic beliefs sometimes, but coming back to the rudder that's guided this Senate and this country since inception. Mr. President, I urge you to trust your local school board. We don't need this bill. We're doing just fine. We truly are, as long as you remain optimistic and trust. Believe in these kids. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Schuler. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I'd have to agree with a lot of things that have been said here with some of the senators. When I first read the amendment this morning, I really thought it was too prescriptive, and I was willing to vote against the amendment and maybe the bill if it got into the amendment. I mean, if the amendment got into the bill. And then I keep reading back over it. There are a couple of lines in the amendment that give me pause. I will have to admit that. But after rereading, it again and again. I think that my thoughts were, I also taught social studies for the first few years of my career, and I always felt like that you never want to indoctrinate your students. I always felt like education is just, we're there to present factual information, and then get kids discussing different topics, and then let them make up their minds. And quite often, you always hope that they had a good support at home, and they had a pretty good idea of what they needed to do or think about. But you always wanted them to think. I never felt like I ever tried to push them one way or the other. I always tried to have them feel that I was very neutral. We're just going to present information, let it go from that. So even though I have just a little issue with a couple of the words in the amendment, I feel comfortable because I think ultimately, in the beginning, it talks about our principles of individual freedom, and I think that's really what it comes down to, is that we have had some changes in our world, and we have some people that I think are treading a little bit on our personal freedoms and our individual rights. And I like the bill better, actually, without this, but I feel comfortable enough after rereading it, and I really think that maybe the amendment is okay, and I'll be able to go ahead and vote for the bill. And thank you for that, Mr. President.
Thank you. Let's see, we had Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to respond to my good friend from Camel Country and his concerns about the last sentence. And his example of him teaching social studies about equality is exactly covered in B3. I think that would be consistent with the principles of individual freedom. No person shall be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, etc. So it's covered. That's not a problem. But I'll get back to the broader picture. The fact that this language, no person is inherently racist, no race is inherently superior to another race, the fact that that's controversial in this body tells you we need this bill. That things are changing and not for the better. If this is somehow controversial, those ideals that have made this country great are now controversial, boy, we've got problems. And I would submit to you, Mr. President, that if we don't stop this critical race theory from getting into our schools, we'll solve the education funding crisis inadvertently, because butts will leave the seats. Parents will pull their kids out of K-12 schools, homeschool, and send them to private school if this kind of stuff continues. I think it's our job as the legislature to set these parameters, these basic fundamental principles of who we are as a people in words. That's all this does. We're not telling you what to teach. We're telling you, you just can't teach kids to hate each other. And if that's controversial, we've got serious problems, Mr. President. On and for the bill.
Question on the bill? Let's go back to Senator Cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that we're very busy today, and so I'm going to keep this somewhat short. I really like this bill for this amendment, and then this amendment really turned my stomach, and I listened to some of the good senators and the debate, and I say to myself, what does that mean about a couple of our other bills that we have? Where does that put them in respect to this one? And how much faith do we have in our schools? And how much faith do we have in our teachers? I know our teachers are going to teach not to talk to a side or one side, but to teach the facts. And kids are going to make up their minds from that. And then, as I listen to the good senator on the wrong side of the bighorns, I find that there's some good points made. I think there is some challenges in our own senator group as to who believes what. And I think that we need to take a good look at that in ourselves and ask ourselves, where do we fit? And is it right or is it not? I'm just going to hope and pray that teachers and districts will look at this amendment as kind of a guiding light towards how we really should reflect on education all the time. And I will support it. But I really liked it in the first division a little better, but it does explain it. Thank you.
Senator McEwen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try to bring this home so we can get to the question on it. First of all, I heard comments about the government dictating how we do business and the government dictating what you do with the newspaper. I don't know what they tell you, but I know what they tell me. They dictate how I sell meat. They dictate how I sell produce. They dictate how many handicap parking spots I have. And whether you agree with it or not, they're still dictating, and we still have to live with it. My other point is, we passed legislation that supported No Child Left Behind. It introduced what I call wonderful topics like new math that frustrates every parent, but yet we let that go through. There was money attached to it. So as we get through this bill doesn't dictate textbooks. It doesn't dictate what can and can't be taught. What it does do is put an emphasis back in the classroom on kids actually liking and supporting each other based on their abilities, not what they look like, where they came from, or how they sound. So as we go into this, I would ask everybody on the floor, please look deep into this, because it's not dictating anything to the school systems. It's not saying we don't trust teachers. It's saying we want to fix an inherent problem before it becomes a large inherent problem. Thank you, Mr. President.
Ready for the question? Oh, Senator Ellis, go ahead. Oh. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President, for my second time. Mr. President, there was an assertion by the chairman of the Education Committee that effectively these are universal truths, and that for anyone to disagree with any of these, you would be an indecent person, that any decent Wyomingite couldn't help but agree with all of these points. Regrettably, I think I disagree with 3 of them. And therein lies the challenge. It is reasonable to agree with these points. It is reasonable to disagree with these points. The challenge is, if this bill passes as written, you don't get to disagree with these points anymore, because you literally have to teach consistent with the following principles of individual freedom. These are apparently principles of individual freedom now, not something I read in the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. Those were pretty good documents. None of these points are in there. They can be believed to be an extrapolation from what's in there, but they're literally not in there. I'm familiar with a lot of those documents, and I don't see any of these sentences in them. And that's why, Mr. President, I'm very comfortable disagreeing with some of these points, because constitutionally, I get to do that. I get to have my own values. I get to have my own beliefs. It's that whole First Amendment, where we get to have our own individual beliefs. We get equal protection for those beliefs as well. This indicates a set of beliefs that is going to be legislated and not by consensus. So we know it's not a universal truth when members of this body will be voting no. The idea that truth can be legislated by majority is disconcerting. It's at the core of my objection. It's at the core of why this body should not be dictating truth or decency. This body should not be in that business. And the idea that we have people that are perfectly comfortable with all of these standards being taught as universal truths, that's something that I find a little bit uncomfortable. Again, Mr. President. I can't question your right to believe that. But what I can ask of you is not to intrude upon my right to disbelieve it, or perhaps more importantly, my right to have my children, 4 of them in the public school system right now, taught a diversity of viewpoints that allows them to disbelieve these points also. I don't want them indoctrinated. That's something we all share. We don't want our children indoctrinated. To me, this is actually indoctrination. Once again, you don't have to agree with me. Therein lies the beauty of our current system. But therein lies the detriment of passing something that prescriptively tells all of our systems of education in the state what they can and can't teach when it comes to what is true freedom. What is it to be an American? Again, not things in the Declaration of Independence, not things in the U.S. Constitution, but things that were written by a few legislators here on the floor that my children are going to have to take as doctrine. Once again, I would urge the body to reject this.
Senator Scott?
We hold these truths. Okay. Mr. President, I have to start again.
You had a great opening. Go ahead.
Mr. President, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was the Declaration of the United States of America in Congress assembled July 4th, 1776. That, Mr. President, is a clear statement of what this country stands for. We have refined that understanding since that. You can see it in our Wyoming Constitution that declares in their inherent right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, all members of the human race are equal. Mr. President, this bill is seeking to have those principles taught and the teaching in the schools in accordance with those principles, because those principles are what this country stands for and has stood for since its beginning. Mr. President, we ought to pass this bill.
Question? Question being called. Senate File 103, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Third reading roll call, Senate File 103. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Murphy? Aye. Garou? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings, excuse. James? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? No. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 103, 25 aye, 4 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 103, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 103 has passed the Senate. Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, I would like to re-refer Senate File 108 from Minerals number 9 to Appropriations number 2. It is social credits, scores, use prohibited.
This is Senate File 108, Senator, and then for minerals 2.
To appropriations number 2, excuse
Number
me.
2, okay, 8-2. Absent objection, Senate File 108 has been re-referred. Senator Carew,
Privilege of the floor, Mr. President.
please do.
Thank you, Mr. President. With us today on the South Gallery, we have 2 of Teton County's finest. Our sheriff, who serves with distinction, Matt Carr, and our police chief of the town of Jackson, Michelle Weber, up there. Give them a warm welcome.
Sheriff, Chief, welcome to the Senate. Okay, second reading amendments to Senate File 1. We got a couple to go through here. Wait. Let's read it in.
Senate File 1, General Government Appropriations.
Senate File 1, oh, you've got it right in, okay. Senate File 1, appropriations. Here we go. There are amendments. Second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1, read it in.
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 1, page 5, line 10.
Senator Perkins, are you taking this? Senator Perkins, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought you caught me off guard a little bit. I thought we did a little general file before we did this, but off we go. Mr.
Well,
Chairman.
my script says it's right now, and
Okay,
here we go.
you're the boss. Between you and the majority floor leader, we're just, we do what we're told. Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I move first reading amendment, second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1 and ask the body's favorable consideration. Members of the Senate, these are, I'll take you through this really quick. These were not all, but these were a number, a few of the what we call cram downs, where there was either at least a 7-5, if not some, and in one occasion a 6-4, what would be, I guess it'd be an 8-4 vote on these, and so they were into the bill against what we did, and like we talked about before, Mr. President, we were trying to listen to the floor. So I'll take you through these, and I'll tell you what these do, and these are fully divisible if anybody wants to debate any one of these. Lines 1 through 10 deal with an issue that's arisen, and this allows the governor to use FNRPA funds to help defray the cost of litigation related to treaties between the United States and federally recognized Indian tribe. Those are languages, that's language used from, as you know, there's some lawsuits about Indian hunting and treaty rights on hunting grounds that have been going on in Sheridan County and up in that neck of the woods. It has and will continue to be an issue for a little while till it's resolved. And so this allows and funds this helps the estate, the county up there, as I believe is asked for a little bit of help in this, and this allows that to happen, or at least doesn't allow that to happen, but at least allows that to be funded as it moves forward. Lines 11 through 13 have to do with this is the other side of the Appropriations Committee wanted to approve an exception request related to the Casper Veterans Museum. The Senate Appropriations Committee didn't think that was wise. It does fund the standard budget. The standard budget for the Casper Veterans Museum is in the budget. This was additional money, and we were not inclined to agree with that. The others do. This one was voted by 4 members of your Appropriations Committee. What we did is as we started to review this and this has to do with the Board of Tourism and what their budget is. As we know, that has moved from the general fund to the fund that was created from the lodging tax. As we look at that and we went through those just the way it happened, the Joint Appropriations Committee, not just the Senate Appropriations Committee, the Joint Appropriations Committee realized that we had as we went through this and the way it was broken out, we didn't understand that we had just right at double the budget of the Board of Tourism, Department of Tourism. And this comes back and cuts a couple things in half. The first one has to do with name brand and extending name brand around. It still leaves $4,413,000 to begin to continue that work and expand that work. The other one has to do with, the other one is cuts in half an amount, reduce the amount, excuse me, so there was, right, so it was, there were two amounts that were decreased there. One was decreased, they were both cut in half. That's what we did. We increased them both by cutting them in half. So it's still a substantial increase to the budget. We'll see where they go with that and what they do with it, but we thought that that was a too rapid of an expansion on a new tax, and we ought to just tread a little bit carefully there. It leaves it in the account, so it's not appropriated for anything else. It leaves it in the account so we can make adjustments and see how that moves as it goes forward. Then you go to page 2. This one, what this one did is this is our preference, your Senate Appropriations Committee preference was to have, there were $75 million in the Common School Permanent Land Fund and $75 million of a deposit into the corpus of the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. This would take it and move it all into the corpus of the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. We did that for two reasons. One, that the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund has a higher rate of return than the corpus of the Common School Permanent Land Fund, so that we actually receive there's about almost a 1% difference between what's earned on those two. And by increasing the amounts in this fund, it goes to the general fund and can be used for supporting anything, whether it's schools or anything else. And so it's a broader fund, and for those two reasons, we thought that was a better deposit and use of that money. Next division is the lines 11 through 18. That has to do with if you remember, we talked about the severance tax caps. You'll see an amendment later that talks about severance tax caps. They have a different idea of that. But that was we talked a little bit about that yesterday. There's two severance tax cap. This is the first one has to do with, or two secondary caps. This one does with the severance tax secondary cap. And what it does is that creates and directs money in from the BRA that would otherwise go to the budget reserve account, and it puts it into the school. It puts it into the school foundation program. So this just puts it back, and it would continue to go into the budget reserve account, which, if that's not expended at the end of the biennium, it sweeps into the LSRA. Then the same thing happens on 19 through 28. That is the FMR secondary cap that divided that and put part of that into a school account, school reserve account, and then this removes that cap and allows any federal mineral royalties above the regular cap to just move into the budget reserve account, which, if not expended, will transfer to the LSRA, where it's available for appropriation. You'll see another bill that deals with those. Those two camps, and those.
We're about out of time, so.
Thank you. Those result in hundreds of millions of dollars. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr.
Aye.
Chairman. Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would at this time like to divide this amendment.
All right, where are you going to do that?
Division number 1 is on page 1, lines 14 through 21.
Okay.
Division number 2 is the balance of the bill, lines
1 through 13.
1 through 13, and then on page 2, 1 through 28.
Go ahead, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also like to divide the amendment, but I don't know if it's appropriate to do that now
Yeah,
to create three divisions.
Well, let's do this. Let's take this division first, okay?
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, let's do this. Okay, Division 1 being lines 14 through 21, Division 2, 1 through 13 on page 1, and 1 through 28 on page 2. Senator Case.
Thinking about the division, if the proposed division involves this section, then you denied, by ruling that we do this first, you may have denied that senator the opportunity to divide. So I think we got to think it out a little bit.
Do you feel denied?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thinking it through a little bit further, I would like to add a third division. Division 3 would be lines 1 through 10.
Division 3, line through 10. All right.
So to clarify, Mr. President, Division 1 would be lines 14 through 21 on page 1. The remainder of the Division 2 would be lines 11 through 13 on page 1, and the balance of everything on page 2. And Division 3 would be lines 1 through 10 on page 1.
Okay, we're going to go with Division 1. I want to repeat this. If I'm off track, put me back on Division 1, 14 through 21. You want to get up and explain that, Senator Grew? Oh, Senator Scott, you got some more divisions?
Mr. President, I will ask to divide Division 2 further, and I don't know whether you want to do that at this time or after we've dealt with the division.
Let's go with the vote on Division 1, then go to Division 2, and you make that division, okay? Division 1, defend yourself. Like that?
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for Division 1, asking you for your favorable consideration. Wait a minute, I guess that's what. Against, sorry. I'm doing this all over again. Let me start against. Against on Division 1, sorry. And ask that you vote against Division 1. This is in the Department of Tourism's budget, as you were told. And I do have to push back gently with my good friends and my good friend the chair on this just a bit. Yes, the budget for the tourism department went offline by virtue of a vote of this body and the body down the hall and the chief executive downstairs. We instituted a way for businesses in this industry to collect fees from people who use that industry and to go offline, which freed up $23 million for us to use whichever way we see fit, and have the dollars that were generated by this fee to go towards promoting the number 2 industry in this state. So now the money's come in. Well, guess what? It's working. And it's working very well. The monies that have come in have exceeded what we thought. Exceeded, I think, what a lot of people thought. Not me personally, but what a lot of people thought. And so what the Board of Tourism have done on behalf of the second largest industry and for the state of Wyoming is say, we are going to be aggressive, we are going to advertise, we are going to try to set up destination marketing organizations around the state. We are going to drill down in every single community that wants it to promote their communities, whether it be something, a show in Buffalo, or maybe a trail system in the southwest part of the state, or maybe something else in other parts of the state that those areas want to promote. We want to drill down and tell the story of those communities and not just do global advertising of the great iconic places that we used to advertise all the time. And really try to start to do some real serious high-level advertising that gets to the heart of each and every community that wants it to build their own tourism story. I have some experience with this. I've done it in my community. 50 years ago, some former members of this body and others in our community decided that we were going to become a world-class destination resort. And we funneled all our energy and all our activities and a lot of our own money to do it. I was involved in some of it. A lot of my friends were. Guess what? It worked. We've gone from the 22nd largest community based on assessed evaluation to one of the largest. We're now a recapture district for our school system. How did we do it? Because we worked on it and we worked aggressively. And that's what this appropriation does for the entire state of Wyoming. It gives everyone a chance. Now, I know in this body, we're a little reluctant, some of you, to raise taxes. Some of you are reluctant to spend taxpayer dollars. while we may disagree on some finer points there, one thing we all know, and one thing I know very well, is that if we need to do is invest. I talked about it a bit yesterday, about our budget and what our group is trying to do, and that's why, frankly, I'm a little bit bewildered at the fact that even my brethren who want to invest and who want to invest in our future now and another time, another place in this budget seem to not want to do it. I think this body does. I want to invest in the future. I want to make more money for you. And the industry is crying out to do just that, to avoid the day when we need more taxes, to avoid the day when those tough decisions have to be made. And that's why I ask you to reject this and let them go on their way. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion, Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's interesting, Mr. Chairman, that the last number of years, the Department of Tourism budget, the Board of Tourism budget, has bumped along right around between $22 to $25 million. And look at all the marvelous things they did on $22 to $25 million. What we found out when we sat down and we did it, and part of it, like I say, we'll claim a little mea culpa on this one, on both sides of this. The entire JAC looked at this. We came back and looked at that. We went from about a $22 million a biennium budget to almost a $41 million a biennium budget in one session. All we're saying here is, and there's a couple of amounts in here that you need to be aware about. What we did is, the governor's rec was to adopt additional almost 8.8 million to one-time money to grow visitation by increasing brand exposure, and also adopted a recommendation to increase $5 million for destination development. What this essentially does is cut those two in half and say, that's fine, let's go ahead, we've got this. We don't know, this account is new. What's happened is there's more money that's that's come into this account from lodging taxes than anybody originally thought. All we're saying is, let's just slow this down a little bit. Let's start this out. It gives them 4 million, another 2.5 million. So there's a significant amount of money. The total amount of money that this reduces is right at $6,913,000. There's still an extra $6,913,000 in the budget to do those very things, to start that work. And what we're simply saying is, let's slow this down and see where this works out. Let's see what the plans are. Let's see how they work. And let's see if there's an opportunity that we want to wade in. Maybe we hear back from locals. Maybe they don't like the way that it's done. Maybe there's a chance to have mid-course corrections. Because what this money does, it goes out and goes into long-term contracts. And those contracts go out, and these folks do tremendous jobs. They market Wyoming around the world and around the country. And they pick out specific markets. And so there'll be some additional markets that come. There'll be some of that, and there's still another $7 million to get started on that. Let's see where it goes and how it works. This is brand new. You have lodging tax that's coming locally. You have this lodging tax that come to the state. Let's see how this works a little bit before we shoot this whole wad and spend this whole wad in this run. We'll have a chance to look at this in a year and decide if this is the right way. We can add some more. If it's not right, we can make a mid-course correction. But if we do it all now, that money will be into contracts, and it'll be hard to get those contracts back if we want to change direction just a little bit. Thank you, I urge you to vote yes on this division.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I encourage you to really look at this. Let's talk about what happens to tourism. We talk about diversifying our economy. And what's happened, folks, is I've watched tourism go from number 3 to number 2 while I've been in the legislature. That's been done by an investment in tourism. We've invested, it's paid off. Now, we moved it off the budget. We moved it from cost and general funds to doing it. So look at the top, and what does it say? It doesn't say general fund, it says other funds. Those are funds generated for tourism, and they're trying to use them to bring more money back to the state. It's number 2 in the economy. They're trying to use it to bring more back. And I'll tell you, for any of you that are in business that have done it, cut your advertising budget in half, or roll out a new program and cut it in half, and then expect it to come up with some different results. And tourism has a good track record. This isn't a new deal they're doing. This isn't a new program we're rolling out and saying, we don't understand it. They do understand it. They've done it. They've done it well. And I'm telling you, is let's not pick the feathers out of the golden goose. It showed us a great return. This is kind of like an oil well and saying, well, you know we can get 1,000 barrels a day if we invest this much money. So why don't we do half and see if we can get 500? I represent to you, let's let them invest their money. And let's argue at the end of the biennium is what do we do with the extra money that came in? Because I think you're going to find, as you promote areas, I've watched where I live at. I live up by a rock up there. And 20 years ago, that rock wasn't on any of the advertising in the state of Wyoming. My brother went on the board. They started promoting it. That area has gone from a minor area to a major area. It's one of the big ones for Wyoming. How many more is there out there? As we promote correctly, how many more is there? Folks, let's invest in our state. Let's take a horse that's winning the race and let's give it a full bucket of oats so that it doesn't maybe only make it part way. Vote this amendment. Thank you.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so I agree with my colleague from Teton County and my colleague from Crook County. We did see a giant increase in tourism. But let's understand what's driving that. I spent some time over in Teton County with my colleagues over there a year ago. Our economy was shut down, people couldn't fly, and what they did is they flocked to Wyoming in the droves. Yellowstone Park had record visitation, Teton County, record visitation. The tower, my colleague over here, record visitation to the rock, was driven by a global pandemic that drove people outdoors in numbers we've never seen. The question that you have to ask yourself, are we going to see that sustainable level, or are we going to see a downturn as we see inflation start to skyrocket, fuel prices up 45%? So what we're trying to do here, folks, is saying, no, we want to invest. There's a 28% increase in this budget over there was on the last biennium. What your JAC has tried to do is take an approach to say, look, what if there is a downturn and we don't get this sustainable $41 million in revenue that comes into this account? What if that doesn't happen, but we spend most of it now, and then we have to come back and pull back? I think anybody that's run a business or even a government organization realize that you need at least 1 year's worth of reserves to make sure that if you do have a downturn, you can continue to operate as planned, on budget, and have the money to do that. And so what we're not saying is here, we're not saying don't fund this. We've said, no, we're gonna fund it, but we wanna fund it at a little bit level to make sure that we can build those reserves up in case we do have a downturn, that there's plenty of money in the budget to be able to fund those things now. And here's the other thing. If you obligate all this money now, and a year from now, something changes. A year and a half from now, something changes. Is there going to be sufficient money to add something new to the? I think it's just consistent with conservative principles and good business, Mr. Chairman, that we hold a little bit of this money back in reserves. We can evaluate these programs. We can look at them in the supplemental, and if they're really working, we can add this money back. But, you know, open the door and throw the horse out and spook him on the way and run down the road. I don't know that that's prudent. I'm not saying it's not right. I don't know that it's not prudent, Mr. Chairman. So the only thing we're saying, let's be a little bit prudent. Let's make sure that there's plenty of money to come back and fund a $30.8 million budget in the next year or the next biennium. We can look at this in the interim. We can get the metrics back and the data. Let's just proceed cautiously.
Thank you. Further discussion? Let's go to Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, on and for the amendment, or the division number 1, the tourism group even helped us to take them off the general fund for $22 million they sacrificed. and they sacrificed it for on the come. They would take a chance on how much they could bring in by increasing tourism. And they did an incredible job of that. And now that they've done an incredible job of it, we want to take some of it away from them and put it in this permanent fund we're talking about. That wasn't the deal I made with them. The deal I made with them is take your chances, and whatever you get to bring, you get. And yes, it may go up and down. I agree with that. But tourism in our state is on the increase. Even during COVID, it's on the increase. So I want to leave their money intact and let them continue to promote tourism in the state of Wyoming. Thank you.
Thank you. We go back to the sponsor. Let's go to Senator Kinski first.
Actually, we're not taking anything away from them. It's travel and tourism money and shall remain travel and tourism money. It'll remain in that account. We're just saying because you got this surplus all at once does not mean you have to spend it all at once, but it will remain in the travel and tourism account. We are not taking it away from them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Back to the sponsor.
Thank you. So once again, you're against the amendment if you want to put this money back into tourism. I was just having a little conversation, and I'm afraid I may have my misspeaking in the beginning might have led to a little bit of confusion. Didn't want to do that. Just another question about this. Well, just cut this little bit out now. We're going to be cautious. The JAC denied Governor's Letter 17, Destination Defining Development Program, $10 million in this budget was denied by the JAC. Another $1.2 million was already denied by the JAC. That's $11,250,000 that's already been taken out of the budget and put aside. And there were others as well. And so I think that we were trying to be cautious. There was also $2 million, if you recall, taken out at the request of others to go towards wayfinding out of the tourism budget. And the tourism group thought that was reasonable. All I would say to you is, folks, that the tourism board and the Department of Tourism, the members of that board are people you know in an industry that you know. And they have worked hard to come up with this budget. This isn't something they just kind of, oh, we got a windfall, so let's spend. If you know them, and we can't say their names, but you know them, they're in your community. These are not radical free spending people. These are good conservative business people that are offering you a good conservative business investment. I am urging you to vote no and take it. Also, Mr. Chairman, on this one, I'd like the ayes and nays.
Okay, roll call requested. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to address just a couple of those things. First of all, when some of those monies were ARPA money and didn't come out of this account. But just going back to this idea that this is tourism money. Folks, this is the lodging tax. This is a tax that is assessed through the authority of the legislature. It was a hard-fought battle, and it prevailed. And it was in large part to take this department and these expenditures off the general fund. But folks, those are tax dollars. Those are not money that's assessed and been paid in by lodging tax and hotels and people around the state. That is money that they collected from their customers. Now, most of those customers are out-of-staters, but not all of them. I've stayed in a lot of hotels around this state. In fact, most of us stay in a lot of hotels around this state as we travel to the interim, and we get to pay that lodging tax. So this idea that this is somehow tourism money, it goes in a tourism account and it stays in a tourism account, but those are tax dollars. They're simply not general fund dollars. So this idea that we don't have to worry about it because it's tourism money, that's what the tax was designated for, and this special account is set up so that it's there and it's not commingled with general fund. But those are tax dollars. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Okay, ready for the question. Question being called. Roll call, please. Oh, Senator Driscoll.
Just for my second time, thank you. She's not sponsored. These are tax dollars. They're tax dollars being invested that bring in more dollars. That's what tourism's done. And it's actually a fact. It's pretty easy to tell. Every time we've invested in tourism, and it's not just Wyoming, they've shown budgets up and down, they bring dollars back. Where else do we spend money? Do we get more money back other than the Department of Audit? I mean, we get some there. Biggest part of what this body does is spends money. It doesn't invest money to make more. Permanent funds, it's kind of like permanent mineral trust fund. Put money in, money comes back more. It's really a good one. There's also, as far as this spending it all out, this is a 1 year extra deal on it. There is a safeguard built in the account. And tourism said the same thing. When they came and did the lodging tax, they said if it goes down, we'll take less. Do you remember that on the floor here? We said, we'll take less. If it's 13 million, if it's 12, we'll take less. We're willing to take that risk. But we'd like you to consider to let us to invest that extra. And that's what we're doing, folks. This isn't a spend. This is an investment, and a good investment. Let's take a shot at it. We're in a time, it's not like we're starving anybody to death by doing this investment. But you might just find that maybe 2 years from now, because it'll take a few years for this to come through, maybe 2-3 years from now, maybe a couple of these counties that don't have a very big tourism business, all of a sudden they're a sizable part. And by the way, that brings money to the state, but what it really does is enhances your local community in the area. This isn't just an investment for us. It's an investment for every small town in the state of Wyoming, because that's where these monies are going, is trying to develop that. I encourage you to vote no, take this out.
All right, question. Roll call, please. This is on Division 1, lines 14 through 21.
Division 1, amendment, second reading amendment number 1. Roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Driscoll? No. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings excused. James? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? No. Landon? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? No. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Division 1, 14 aye, 15 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, Division 1 has failed. Division 2, double check me, folks, on this. I have Division 2, 1 through 10, page 1, page 2, 1 through 28. Oh, Senator Scott, go ahead.
Mr. President, I would like to divide out on Division 2, on page 2, lines 1 through 9. And, Mr. President, what I'm seeking to divide out is the issue of, on the permanent savings, is it going to go evenly to the Permanent Mineral Trust and the Common School Fund, or is it all going to go to the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund? And I'm looking for the Appropriations Committee, make sure I've got it divided right. I think I have.
Yeah, Senator Scott, what do you call that division?
Page 2, lines 1 through 9 to be
1 through
divided out.
Okay, you want to number it?
Mr. President, you've got a third division ahead of it, that's fine. But I want it divided out from Division 2.
Okay.
Call it Division 4, if nothing.
All right, that's what we'll call it. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Brief point of order. Just for our insurance that we keep all of the numbers, would suggest it be divided as page 2, lines 1 through 10 as Division 4.
Okay, page 2, lines 1 through 10, Division 4, the Scott Division. Okay, Senator Perkins.
Mr. President, we think that's the appropriate division. Just on that point of order, we think that's the right division. We think that's the right
Okay,
division of that amendment.
all right, so at this point, we're going to take Division 2, we're going to address the Scott Division. Division 2 does not include then 1 through 10, correct? Okay, we're at Division 2 with the Scott Division taken out. Division 2 is 1 through 10 on page 1 and 10 through 28 on page 2. Senator Ellis.
Point of order, Mr. President. Division 3 is page 1, lines 1 through 10.
Okay,
So Division 2 is page 1, lines 11 through 13, and then page 2, lines 11 through 28.
let's go with Division 2, page 1, lines 1 through 13. 11 through 13, excuse me. This is, go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Mr. President, if I may, just to provide clarity, as has been divided to this point, page 1, lines 1 through 10 would be Senator Ellis's Division 3. Page 1, lines 11 through 13, and page 2, lines 11 through the balance would currently be Division 2. And we have already done Division 1, which you'll recall was page 1, lines 14 through 21. And then on page 2, lines 1 through 10 would be Senator Scott's Division 4.
But we're back on Division 2. So Division 2 being on page.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
If I may. There's nothing that says that we have to do divisions in order, and based on how this is proceeding, it does seem like it would be a reasonable course of action to go to 3 and then 4 and then potentially back to 2 and see if there would be further division.
Okay, we're going to go
There's
to.
nothing that says that's out of order.
We're going to go to Ellis 3, which is 1 through 10. Is that correct, Senator Ellis?
Sure. Yes, Mr.
Okay.
President.
You want to address that now?
Thank you, Mr. President. On against Division 3, if you read this language, Senators, this is to fund litigation costs between Wyoming counties and litigation relating to a treaty between the United States and a federally recognized Indian tribe. Mr. President, I've been following this litigation for some years. In essence, it involves an out-of-state tribe that had retained some hunting rights through a treaty to hunt in Wyoming on certain lands. The U.S. Supreme Court declared that that right still exists despite the creation of a national forest and statehood, and that right extends to unoccupied areas as long as the conservation of the species of whatever's being hunted is being managed. Rather than having a proactive approach, this continues on in litigation involving other cases. Your Select Committee on Tribal Relations heard an update on this particular matter, and we received testimony from tribes that have been working cooperatively with their states to address these kind of issues. I've asked repeatedly why Wyoming doesn't start taking that tact, and the answer I received tends to be, we just want to see how the litigation plays out. Mr. Chairman, I think now is the time for Wyoming, instead of to continue to fight this through litigation, figure out how we can make sure that we're affording those rights, as well as conserving for the species and working cooperatively and not putting our citizens in question about what those rights are. So I would urge your rejection of Division number 3. And I'd also note that this is a bit of a doubling up of efforts. It would pay for the litigation costs incurred by the counties, as well as those funds could be used by the state. We have 2 entities who are fighting the same fight, making many of the same arguments, and I just think this is a bit redundant. So I'd urge you to defeat Division number 3.
Senator Ellis, just clarifying what we're doing here with you. This is only 1 through 10, Division 3, right, on page 1?
Correct, Mr. President. This only deals with an added footnote. That would be footnote 8.
Okay, thank you. Senator Kinski.
Thank you. On and for Division 3. I agree with my friend from Cheyenne that it would be great if this could all be worked out collaboratively. But this case was sent by the Supreme Court back down to county court, where it will then go through district court, where it will then be appealed to the circuit, U.S. Circuit, where it will probably go back to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I have a county attorney who says there are some profound implications of this hunting ticket that can impact everybody's right to hunt in Wyoming, can impact the use of our public lands for generations. And she says, I'm in there with a pea shooter. I need some help. So this funding is intended to help the Attorney General either take the case over completely and bring in the kind of people who are conversant in the constitutional and the treaty issues to really handle it right, or else to get the resources to the county attorney to do it right, or some combination of both. But we cannot leave her twisting in the wind with her little county budget to litigate a criminal case that has these kind of implications for everybody in Wyoming. So I would urge an affirmative vote on Division 3. I'd like for it to be worked out collaboratively, but unfortunately, this is where we are.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Asking for an aye vote on Division 3. Any further discussion? Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President, for my second time. I think the prior speaker's comments prove the point. If an agreement can be reached, which I think one can be, then you tell the court, we're done fighting, we've got a solution. And so my goal here is to circumvent that multi-year process, expensive process of seeking the court's resolution to decide our fate, rather than having our leadership sort that out in a way that's more timely, and I think will lead to a fairer result for Wyoming citizens. So I'd urge your defeat of Division number 3.
All right. That's a request for defeat. On to Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. On in favor of Division 3. This isn't something just the Joint Appropriations Committee is working with. We visit with folks downstairs in both those offices. If you're going to go do this, there's profound implications. You hope you don't litigate, but the fact of the matter is, if it can't be worked out collaboratively, you can't tie one hand behind your back. Unfortunately, that's the society we live in. I encourage your aye vote.
Ready for the question? Question being called. Roll call on Division 3, page 1, 1 through 10.
Second reading amendment number 1, Division 3. Roll call, Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings excused. James? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? No. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Division 3, 23 aye, 6 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, Division 3, page 1, 1 through 10 has passed the Senate. Let's take it over to maybe the Scott Amendment now. Number 4, on page 2, lines 1 through 9. Senator Scott?
1 through 10.
1 through 10, excuse me.
Mr. President, the issue here, as I understand, is quite simple. We're proposing with either the bill or with this amendment to put $150 million into permanent savings. And that's something I hope we can all support. The question is, should it be divided evenly between the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund and the school permanent land fund that supports K-12 education? I rise as your chairman of your education committee, Mr. President, to say that I think an even division where half of it goes to the permanent education fund is a good idea. That K-12 education is the most important thing this state has done. We have not put as much into building that fund up, I think, as we should have in the past. I think it's important that we support education that way. The net effect and what we spend in the next few years may well be about the same, because we're going to fund the schools the way we're going to fund them, whether we take general fund money or education fund money to do it. But I think it is important that we stress our support of education. I would also say I heard one thing that disturbed me in the earlier description on this, and that was that there was somehow a different yield, not quite as good in the Common School Fund. If that's the case, our select committee ought to take a look and see why. These are both large permanent funds, and if the education fund is underperforming, we need to look to how it's managed, because it and the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund should, over time, basically have the same rate of return. As I understand the way we've structured our laws on investments on that, and if that's not true, we need to change that. But that's not what's at issue here, Mr. President. So I'm urging you to vote no on this amendment, to keep the even division that came to us in the budget bill. And piece of housekeeping, Mr. Chairman. This is a division, and the sponsor of the amendment is the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, and ought to be able to have the last word, as we traditionally give to the sponsor of the amendment. I don't intend to speak again, but I urge us to vote against this amendment and preserve the even division with education.
To Chairman of Appropriations, Senator Perkins.
Thank you. In favor of the vision, and really it's just a simple math problem. Unfortunately, when you go back and look at the active admission and some specific language in the Constitution as it involves this the permanent fund of the Common School Permanent Land Fund, that you just can't invest in some of the same things you do in the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. And in fact, as we've looked at it, there's actually, you actually have to change the Constitution, and that there's an effort going on to do that. So this is really just a simple math problem in your Appropriations Committee issue. There's the differential between the overall earnings on the Common School Permanent Land Fund and the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund is about 1%. That means if you have 75, that means that's not a ton of money, but if that 1% on $75 million is $750,000 a year, $1.5 million a year, that's more income to one fund than to the other if you look at their average returns. And that's because there's language in there that requires it to be income, and so it requires a more conservative investment strategy, and a lot of it's invested in fixed incomes. Much more is invested in fixed income in the Common School Permanent Fund than in the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. So it's just simply a math problem. With respect, and so when we look at it, we're funding from various sources that would otherwise, if not from the general fund, would otherwise go to the general fund through the budget reserve account. We're funding $200 to $300 million a year from the various forms that would otherwise be general fund or the budget reserve account that we shift over to fund schools. So we're always going to write the check for schools. And so this is simply a math problem that we get a higher rate of return in the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. But my good friend, much taller senator from Natrona County is exactly right. We need to increase the amounts in both these funds. Our hope is that we can get this fixed so that we can invest both these funds, well, particularly the Common School Permanent Fund, in a more appropriate way. And there's some work being done on that. And Mr. Chairman, we may be lucky to see that come over here and get a chance to look at it and talk about it more next week. So with that, I just, if you want, that's the reason why it's no secret. We just get a higher rate of return there for right now. And that's why we have this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ready for the question? This is on amendment number 4, page 2, lines 1 through 10. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 1, Division 4. Roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings, excuse. James? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Cost? Landon?
Excused.
Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins?
Aye.
Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? No. Cost? No. President Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye to no. Salazar? Aye to no. Schuler? Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Division 4, 22 aye, 7 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, Division 4, lines 1 through 10 have passed the Senate. Folks, we're back on Division 2 now, which would be page 1, lines 1 through 13, and page 2, lines 11 through 28. Yeah. Page 1, 11 through 13, page 2, 11 through 28. Anybody want to speak to this? Question? Division 2.
Question.
Roll call, please.
Division 2. Second reading amendment number 1. Roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings, excuse. James? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins?
Aye.
Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstetter? Aye. Closing vote. Anderson? No to aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Division 2, 29 aye, 1 excused.
By your vote, Division 2, page 1, lines 11 through 13, and page 2, Lines 11 through 28 have passed the Senate. Mr. Floor Leader, what's your thoughts?
Mr. President, I move we stand recessed till 2 PM. We made it through 1 this morning. It'll only take us 32 days.
That's what I was just noting. Well, off to a good start. Announcements. Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, your Minerals Committee will meet today upon noon recess in Capitol Extension Room W4 and online to hear Senate File 55, Insurance Sandbox, Senate File 56, Lottery Amendments, Senate File 71, Deregulated Industrial Power Zones, Senate File 106, if we have time, Wyoming Stable Token Act. Thank you.
Senator Landon, go ahead.
Mr. President, just a reminder, your Senate Transportation Committee will meet upon adjournment tonight, whenever that might be. And we'll take up Senate File 14, Telecommunicator Cardiopulmonary Resuscitation, Senate File 22, Utility Trailers Permanent Registration, Senate File 17, Automated Transport of Cargo or Goods, that's a continuation, and then Senate File 52, Special License Plates Organ Donations. Again, that's tonight upon adjournment. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
well, based on our pace here, Mr. Chairman, you might be there for a while tonight. Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President. Your Committee Number 3, Revenue, will meet tomorrow upon the noon recess to take up House Bill 21, repealing the exemption for one-way pagers, and House Bill 22, Industrial Revenue Bonds Pilot Payments. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further announcements? Further announcements? I have a reminder here. Tomorrow is the last day for Senate files to be reported out of some Senate committees. Okay. Oh, Senator Hicks, you have something?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, just a reminder for everybody, breakfast will be served tomorrow at 7 down in the Capitol Extension by the Wyoming Association of Chiefs and Sheriffs. If you want to stop down, they'd be love to have you to come down and stop by for breakfast and visit. Many of your sheriffs and chiefs of police will be down there tomorrow morning, so please avail yourself of that opportunity.
Thank you. Further announcements? As I recall, Mr. Floor Leader, you said 2. Senate will stand in recess until 2 p.m.